crazy homeowner association fined us for having too many cars on our property and issued petty fines for painting our house. We sued and taught them a lesson. So here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and click the bell to turn on notifications. I live in North Texas in an HOA of about 200 homes. It is about 30 years old with no real amenities, just a few common areas and $35 monthly dues. I have lived here since 2011 and had no real problems until recently when the board hired an outside PMC who decided that what our neighborhood really needed was lots and lots of fines. They are fining everyone for anything they can, and I am convinced that the PMC is getting a % of the fine money and maybe even paying kickbacks to the crazy cat lady who has run the HOA for as long as I have lived here. After getting fined more than $200 for complete nonsense, I started digging and discovered some really interesting things. Someone please tell me if I'm crazy or not. Our DCCR does not say a single word about fines. The only thing it says about enforcement is something about in-law and equity. And according to the Texas Law Library, HOAs can only issue fines if that power is granted in the DCCR, right? But that is not all. There is also Chapter 209 of the Property Code that says they have to send a certified letter before fining. But they haven't. Chapter 209 also has all sorts of rules about open meetings and notices. They never send out notices for meetings, they are basically ignoring everything in the law. Am I missing something, or should I sue the crap out of them and definitely win? Would a lawyer be likely to take this case on contingency since the HOA will have to pay legal fees? I know that the HOA has $150K in reserves so they can afford a fight, but wouldn't it be stupid to fight something where they are so clearly in the wrong? I really want to sue them just to wipe the smug smile off of Cat Lady's face. And now, sometime later, we get the final update to OP's story, and it is titled, I sued my HOA and won. There seems to be a lot of posts about wanting to take legal action against an HOA, but very few actually do it. So I thought I would share my story. This is not legal advice. I have been in my HOA for 15 mostly drama-free years until a few years ago when the HOA changed management companies. The new one decided that they were going to be more proactive on enforcement of violations. Not that things were going downhill, they weren't. Everyone's home has basically doubled in value over the last few years. They are well maintained, nice, newer homes in a desirable area. The new PMC, Property Management Company, got the board to adopt new rules and regulations and new bylaws. The board has essentially been controlled by one old lady for about 10 years, and I will call her Karen. Karen has never liked me and about 6 other families in the neighborhood, and we suspected all along that she would use the new rules to target those she did not like, which is exactly what happened. Sometime later that year, we started getting violation notices via email for really stupid stuff. One was for a package left on the porch and one was for a bag of mulch left out. No fines yet, but that came soon enough. Around the same time, we decided to paint our house. Part of the process to have the color approved is that you have to paint a 3-foot square on the front so the ARC can look at it. However, they rejected it, so we painted another one, resubmitted it, and waited and waited and waited. They never approved or denied the second color, so we waited for the 30-day clock to run out, after which you can assume approval. And then the fines started. With no warning, we got an email stating that we had been fined for having mismatched paint. Yes, they were fining us for painting the squares that they require in order to approve a color. We were also fined for having Christmas lights in the summer. There have never been Christmas lights on our house. This was likely an address mix-up. We complained on the HOA's website, but were banned immediately. So far, this was all done via email, but to appeal a fine, you have to send a certified letter to the PMC, which we did, but in the meantime, we spoke to a lawyer who specializes in HOA law. He reviewed our DCCR and all other docs and gave us this advice for the appeal. Just politely say that you don't think that the board has the authority to issue fines. That's it. Don't get into anything further. That is exactly what we did, and the board was gobsmacked at our gal to question their omnipotence and our non-participation in their appeal. They upheld the fines as expected, which made our lawyer very happy. We also learned that someone else had been fined for having too many cars, and someone else got a mowing fine that was intended for their neighbor. This PMC was completely incompetent, add a fair dose of malice from Karen and indifference from the other board members, and you get a train wreck. What we knew, but apparently they didn't, is that HOAs in Texas don't have a statutory authority to issue fines. That power must be granted in the restrictive covenants, and ours did no such thing. There is also a law, Chapter 209 of the Texas Property Code, which among other things states that before fines can be issued, the HOA must send a certified letter to the owner, giving them an opportunity to cure the violation. However, they did no such things. 209 also states that all board meetings must be open to all owners, and any meeting where rules, regulations or bylaws are going to be discussed must be noticed to all homeowners. They did not do any of that. We had them dead to rights and everyone knew it. Texas also has a law that grants attorney fees to the prevailing party in a suit about violations of covenants. This usually benefits the HOA, but it can work both ways. Our fantastic attorney wrote a devastating but absolutely beautiful complaint. It was pure poetry and I should have framed it. It was served on the board and PMC. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I imagine it was pure panic once they spoke to a lawyer who told them they were totally screwed. A few weeks later we heard that Karen and a couple other board members had decided that they were just too busy to continue serving on the board and sadly had to step down. There was an election and now the board is controlled by the very people who had been targeted by their BS fines. The HOA lawyer asked to settle. We asked for refunding all fines, late fees and penalties ever issued to anyone over a violation plus interest. The PMC can no longer have anything to do with violations, they can only do administrative things. Revoking all actions taken by the board in the last 4 years and adding a term limit that prevents Karen from running again for 10 years. It does not name her but is worded so that it only applies to her. And of course, pay all our legal fees. We could have gone further, but at this point the bad board members had fled the scene, so we would just be inconveniencing people who had been on our side all along. This worked out really well for us, but a few words of caution. If the HOA had decided to fight, there is a 50-50 chance that we would have lost at the district court level. This is because in Texas, judges are elected and the HOA lobby, CAI, is a huge contributor. Many district court judges will grant summary judgment against any homeowner regardless of the facts. We definitely would have won on appeal, but we had to be prepared to go the distance and pay up to 20k or more out of pocket, knowing that eventually we would get it back. And no, HOA lawyers don't work on contingency and they are really expensive. Another word of caution for anyone considering legal action: make sure that you have a lawyer who specializes in HOA law. Not real estate law, not your cousin's college roommate who just passed the bar. The deck is stacked against the homeowner, and even with a slam dunk case it could be ruinously expensive if the HOA decides to go the distance just to F you over. You are spending your own money to fight. The HOA is also spending your money and that of the neighbors and their insurance company to fight back. A large HOA could spend 100k plus and make you do the same just to make an example out of you. You need a lawyer who has done exactly this before and knows the HOA law inside and out. At the end of the day, you have to weigh the cost and benefit of a lawsuit just like anything else. In my case, it was worth it because we don't plan to move and this was the only way guaranteed to stop the BS and get the HOA back on the rails. And yeah, ripe stars, that just shows once again that HOAs are really sometimes like some sort of shadow government, and it can be really difficult to fight them if A, you don't have a good lawyer, or B, you're not loaded with money. And by the way, my apologies, maybe my voice sounds a little bit weird today. That is because unfortunately I got recently infected with the famous virus, but I'm already feeling pretty well, so I should be fine again soon. My 22 female fiance, 25 male, wants his father to check my hymen tomorrow night before I get married. My fiance proposed to me about 8 months ago. We decided on having a relatively small wedding, which is in 2 days. Everything was going great, he seems absolutely perfect and we are very much in love. I am a virgin and so is he. He wanted to save it for marriage and I was not fussed, so I agreed to saving it. He has told me earlier that in his family, the father checks the virginity of the bride the night before the wedding. I laughed this off as it seriously sounds like a massive joke. But no, it turns out he was dead serious. He wants me, the night before, to open my legs up in a small ceremony type thing so his dad can check me while him, his brothers and uncle can watch so that they know I am still pure. I told him fat chance I'm going to do that and he was begging me to go through with it and how important it is for him. He said he knew it was slightly embarrassing for me, but his mom did and it will prove how much I love him and that I have nothing to hide anyway as I am still a virgin. I left and he was crying. It was very dramatic, to be honest. I want to call off the whole wedding because of this and never talk to him again. But at the same time, it is only one thing and other than that, we are genuinely perfect for each other and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else and it is very important to him and his family. What the hell do I do? I am currently at my friend's house and I might stay here for the night. Tomorrow would be our last day as an unmarried couple and I am straight up panicking. A user in the comments says, anytime a person tells you XXX will prove how much you love me, they are manipulating you. You should not have to prove that you love someone if you're planning to marry them. Don't let him play mind games like that. Comment number 2, he said he knew it was slightly embarrassing for him, but his mom did and it will prove how much I love him. So, OP, he told you in all sincerity that showing your genitals to his father, uncles and brother is the same as you showing your love for him? Who gives a F what his mom did to get married X years ago? He can go marry his mom if he wants someone who is comfortable with this strange tradition. Or he can offer to show off his taint to all of your mom, aunts, sisters, etc. It is only slightly embarrassing, right? In all honesty, this sounds borderline cult-ish. If you really want to marry this man, you should not allow him to push you into something you are uncomfortable with. It would be a very bad start to the marriage. You are 22 and inexperienced sexually, so from that information, there is a chance this will be your first experience showing your private area to someone who is not a medical professional. Do you really want those people to be all your fiance's immediate male family members? And yeah, ripe stars, I don't even know where to begin with this one. The only thing I would suggest to OP is to run away as far as she can, as quickly as possible, and not marry this idiot. This would not have even been okay several centuries ago, so something like this definitely has no place in society in the 21st century. I really hope that OP runs away from this person. Please let us know in the comments what you think about this story. And the next one is an update to the first story. First of all, thank you so much for all the replies. I did not think this would get so big. I have read pretty much all of them. Special shout out goes to the person who says this was fake solely on the fact that I write like a man, whatever that means. Also, thanks for the gold and silver. It is appreciated, although if you want to spend money, give it to a charity or something. I went and talked to him this morning. I told him that his father is not going to look at me and he needs to respect that. He was adamant that it needs to happen and accused me of lying about my virginity. I was trying to be calm and rational, but he was not having it and just became more and more angry. I told him if he really loved me, he would stand by me on this and tell his father no, to which he slapped me and said he did not need to prove anything. So I ended it and left him. I am currently back at my friend's house being miserable and eating pizza, which is pretty fun. So yep, thanks everyone. And yeah, ripe stars, I gotta say, I am really happy that OP did not go through with the wedding. This was definitely for the better and she 100% dodged a huge bullet. More like a cannonball if you ask me. Anyway, if you enjoy relationship stories, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled Politician Revenge. First off, I will provide a little backstory. This was about 3 to 4 years ago when I was 16. At the time, a politician in one of our active political parties of the city was under investigation for an ATM robbery she supposedly took part in, because they had found the getaway car in her backyard along with bullet shells they used to crack the thing open. The problem was she had a good lawyer who claimed her car was stolen by the people who did the actual crime. This was not a very plausible story, considering she already was on a watch list surrounding drug abuse, but it was enough to keep the authorities from actually being able to convict her. Now that that is clear, here is where I, or rather me and some friends, come in. On a Saturday evening we had decided to go see a movie in the movie theater. It was the late night movie, so from 10 PM to midnight. Afterwards we decided to take an alternate route home on our bikes. We all live close to each other, so we rode together. This route was a little longer over a very long street, but it was better lit. This also happened to be the street the politician lived in. As we are riding along this street, we notice a person walking her dog in the distance. Well, walking was a big word. She was more like skipping, flailing her arms in the air while pulling her poor dog along that clearly had no idea what was going on. As we got closer, we moved from the bike lane, as she was using it to walk on, onto the street that was empty of cars. Suddenly my friend that was riding next to me said, "Isn't that cocaine, insert bad word, from insert political party?" I know, not a very nice thing to say, but he said it very quietly as to not have her hear it. At least that is what he thought. As we rode past her, she started screaming stuff at us. We could not understand what for the life of us and were convinced she had not heard what my friend had said, so we started checking if maybe we had dropped something. We kept biking though, since we did not trust the situation and did not want to stop. We figured she was just extremely intoxicated and kept going. Fast forward a minute or two, we are still riding on the same street, as I said, very long street, when a car pulls up behind us. We move back onto the bike lane so it can safely pass, but instead of that happening, the car crosses the stroke of grass that separated the road from the bike lane and pulls right in front of us. Surprise, surprise, it is the woman from earlier. She gets out of the car screaming how offensive and disrespectful we are that we just say stuff like that. As we are on bikes, we evade the car, panicking out of our minds because we are being chased by a crazy woman that was clearly on drugs. This goes on for another 2 times, her trying to block us and us dodging her car, before we decide to try and lose her by turning into a different street. Considering our town can be like a maze in certain areas, we actually do lose her by randomly turning left and right. As we notice she is not behind us anymore, we pull over to try and calm down. After a minute we start talking about what to do. One of my friends says we should just go home, but while our panic is fading away, it gets replaced with anger on my side. I never had a good temper and really cannot handle disrespect well, though I worked on it and it is a lot better now. But in that time, I decide to do something else than go home. I pull out my phone and call the police. I explain the entire story and where we were, and they say someone will be there in a couple of minutes. The police station was pretty close. I say to my friends they can go home if they want, but that I'm going to go back to see what happens. One of them decides to go home, the other one follows me back. As we get back on the long street, it does not take long before we run into her again, as she was still looking for us. Again, she blocks us off, but this time we stop as well. Keeping our distance, we start sort of asking her what is her problem, as she continues yelling how disrespectful we are, as she tries to come close to do God knows what. Bad timing on her part, the police show up as she leaps for my friend, who easily dodged her since she's under the influence of something not very good. They take her down and cuff her, and as one of them starts asking us questions about what happened, the other cop searches the car. For some reason, she gets very aggressive towards cop number 2 when he opens the car door. Turns out there was a lot of very illegal drugs in the trunk, but not only that. Apparently our dearest politician had decided to get rid of all the evidence the police had not found yet surrounding the ATM robbery together with her drug stash, and had been planning to do that the day after that Saturday. So not only did they find drugs, but also a lot of cash which serial numbers matched the ones that were stolen from the ATM in question, together with a gun and homemade explosive devices. 2 months later and she has to pay up a huge fine and is convicted to 7 years in prison. I remember having to go to court to share the story a couple of times. So yeah, she should have thought chasing some high schoolers through a little better, especially with all the necessary evidence to a crime she committed in the very car she used for the chase. Thank you to everyone who read through all that. I wanted to be as complete as possible. And the next one is titled, Did a Property Survey and Explained My Plans to My Neighbor About Installing a Privacy Fence. Maybe getting into a property line dispute. What are the laws surrounding easements I need to worry about, if any, and what are my rights regarding trees bordering our properties? I purchased a home in Fort Thomas, KY, located in Campbell County last year, and this summer we plan to install a privacy fence surrounding our property. I checked and privacy fences are permitted by our local laws. The previous owners had a fence, but the rear portion did not extend across the very back of the property and instead stopped some 20 to 30 feet away. We had a property survey done to determine where the back property line was, since the old fence did not run along it, and learned that our property extends back farther than we originally thought. The neighbors behind us, who have lived in their home for about 6 years, were surprised as well and are now raising concerns about our plans to install the new fence. There are 2 specific concerns that the neighbor has raised. Our property line sits 4 feet from their concrete driveway. When discussing the matter with our neighbor, he brought up something which he termed easement to an existing structure, a term I had never heard, and claimed that since his driveway is a structure which existed prior to my plan to install this fence, there are laws/ordinances pertaining to the distance any structure I build must be from his existing structure. I could not find much online about this term, but it is possible I don't have the right legal vocabulary to search properly. When it comes to property lines, is there an easement I need to be concerned about, and if so, what? I checked my warranty deed and it states the subject property is subject to easements, covenants, conditions and restrictions of record and or in existence. How do I determine what these might be? Along the whole back portion of my property, including along the property line, is much foliage. In particular, along the property line, there is a lot of overgrown honeysuckle and other smallish trees that kind of form a green privacy barrier of sorts between us. In order to install the new fence, much of this foliage needs to be cleared. My question is about what I am allowed to clear. I've heard that if a tree is on my neighbor's side but branches of it extend over to my side, I am allowed to trim those branches back. Is that true? And what about trees that sit directly on the property line? Who is allowed to do what with them? I really don't want to remove something I'm not legally allowed to and have my neighbor get more upset. When Monday rolls around, I plan to engage the local government in some way to learn more, but in the meantime I thought I would get a head start and see if anyone here knows anything or has had similar experiences. Thank you. Thanks to those who have responded. Did not think lots of people would be interested in a property dispute on a Friday night. I'm going through and responding where necessary now. And a user in the comments said, yes, your plan for Monday is the right step to take. If there's a real easement for stormwater/drainage purposes, utilities, forest protection, etc., they should have a record of it by a plat and or deed. I would also ask them about a couple of other things. Do you need a permit to install a fence? What are the property line setback requirements for a fence? Does it need to be set back from driveways for other properties? Don't use the word structure when you ask that last one. Generally, driveways are not considered structures, so regulations that state an existing structure on a neighboring property must have clearance of 2 feet from fences on an adjacent property or so on would not even be applicable for a driveway. But that varies. You would need to understand how it is interpreted in your area. The county might not have that answer and might defer to an attorney. And guys, I'm curious, have you ever been engaged in any sort of property disputes with your neighbors or other people? Let us know how it went. Update to the property survey story. It has been over 3 months since I made my original post. For a Friday night post, I actually got a lot of responses, and I thank everyone who participated. The main reason this update took so long is because the fence company was hella booked due to COVID. Everyone is doing home projects. I finally got my fence in last week. Also, given that we now have an enclosed backyard, we got a doggo. Between the last post and now, I have not had much contact with the angry neighbor. I decided to basically avoid him and only communicate with him if I had to. In the meantime, I took your advice and hired a lawyer to put my ducks in a row. This was basically peace of mind in case the neighbor came at me with more drama. I also talked to the city zoning director, who told me the neighbor had no idea what he was talking about and he gave me my permit. I feel like I should mention that the neighbors on either side of me are super nice, and I've made it clear that while the fence is indeed a privacy fence, there are gates available to them should they want to drop by, and they are welcome anytime. The both of them are planning to get matching fences to stretch along the back of their properties as well. The guy on my left, site 1 photo above, also borders the property of my angry neighbor, so this dude is in for more fence frustration. During the days the fence was being installed, my neighbor and his family were watching the workers like hawks. The dude even came out and yelled at the workers for being too close to his site, to which the foreman told him to go away. I guess these fence guys deal with this nonsense all the time and have hard skin about it. Anyway, the fence is up, the dog is having a great time, and in my opinion, it looks great back there. I know not everyone is keen on privacy fences or fences in general, and to each their own. We love it and did it by the book, and this neighbor can continue to F off for the foreseeable future. Neighbor is using land for hosting campers upwards of 200 plus. We live in a suburban area where all homeowners have a minimum of 1 acre. The neighbors who live next to us have decided to start posting their 10-acre land on a website, omitted the website name, to attract campers who pay to stay the night on the property. Since starting the land rental, there have been feces, urine and weed stenches coming from the area. The website lists that the only on-site bathroom is $50 per night, which is much higher than the rent to stay on the property. Additionally, there are multiple 15-foot fires that take place at all hours of the night and then left to simmer until the early morning hours unmonitored. It has become a huge concern for the other neighbors' health and safety, and multiple individuals have contacted the zoning office to file a complaint. Is this even legal? What is the best course of action if the zoning office does not see sufficient evidence of the chaos that typically occurs on weeknights and weekends when zoning officials are not on the clock? And a user in the comments said, untended fires are not legal, call the fire department every time. Defecating outside is not legal, call the health department. Weed is not legal via state law most places and is illegal at a federal level everywhere, call the police. Update: neighbor using land for hosting campers upwards of 200 plus. Thank you all for your advice and motivation. The zoning board was contacted by my count and upwards of 20 plus people within the week following my post. The board updated us saying that this is not the first they have heard of / had to shut down sites that are advertised online, and that they would conduct a more formal investigation on site the following week. The administrator who came to investigate did so that Monday, and within 24 hours the site was no longer accessible to the public and all amenities were removed from the land as well. All neighbors have now been provided with some important non-emergency numbers to call if anyone sees camping activity in the future. Again, thanks to everyone's advice, it gave my neighbors and me some great insight to an issue which seems relatively new. And guys, we have reached the end of the video. I would very much appreciate it if you could like the video and post some star emojis in the comments. Thank you so much, and I see you again tomorrow.